לב טהור, ברא לי אלוהים, ורוח נכון, חדש בקרבי. I am Father Agapetos. Learn how Jesus prayed the Psalms.
Dwelling in water, the hills are drinking still of your gift.
So, good evening. We are here together in our exploration of the Psalter, and we're in the second book of the Psalter, in the last group of Psalms, in that second group. And tonight we have Psalm 68, which is at the heart of this last group, but it's also at the heart of the life of the church. So during Easter week, we open our morning and evening celebration with the first verses of this Psalm 68. So let me just read to you what we sing. In other words, for us, it's the song that puts us into the mystery of the resurrection. And this is what we sing. Let God arise and let his enemies be scattered, and let those who hate him flee before his face. As smoke vanishes, so let them vanish, as wax melts before the fire. So let the wicked perish at the presence of God, and let the righteous ones rejoice. So let God arise and let his enemies be scattered. And there's this, his enemies, his main enemy is death. And death is vanquished by the resurrection of Christ. And all the righteous ones rejoice. That's the joy of Easter. So that's the opening of this psalm. And so it's a long psalm. And tonight is going to be an introduction to this very rich psalm, which is considered one of the most mysterious psalms in the Psalter. So that's why I hope tonight you can get a first approach to the psalm. We're going to love this psalm, though it has full of mysteries. So let me share to you now the text of the psalm. So you have before your eyes this this Psalm 68, and it has an introduction, and basically that is what I read to you just now, in which we celebrate in Easter. We'll come back to it. And then from verse 5 to verse 11, which you have before your eyes, we have a first group with the central verses, which are in red. And then from verse 12 to verse 24, we have a second group with also central verses in red. And then we have a third, last group from verse 25 to the end with the central group in red. And I really would like, at least tonight, that you see the structure. I have been insisting on how important it is to approach a psalm with having a structure so that we let parts shine, each one and each one with another. And I think we're not going to be able to go in detail in the 36 verses, but I think just to get the structure of this psalm and the main theme, the central theme of this psalm, it's going to be a wonderful visit, which I hope we have tonight. So let's just start. The psalm has a very anonymous type of superscription, right? For the leader, a psalm of David, a song. Anonymous because the preceding psalms have almost the same superscription. In other words, it's a continuity of the theme of this last part of Book 2 of the Psalter. We are celebrating God, and but the opening there's really a great opening like we have in operas or in different symphonies, and which is what we sing during Easter week as to keep us in the spirit of the resurrection of Christ. So I do want to read through this opening, verse 2 to verse 4, and comment just a little bit because it launches the whole psalm. As it launches our celebration of the resurrection of Christ. But this is many centuries before, but it's a beautiful prophetic announcement of what. Well, let's take a step by step. So we have first, let God arise. Yakum Elohim. Let Elohim arise. Yakum Elohim. And in Hebrew, when we give the Paschal salutation, it's Hakam come. It's the same come. It's he arise, he rose, right? Let God arise. Let Elohim resurrect. And this arising of Elohim is one which is immediately associated with two aspects. First aspect is the elimination of the enemy, and the second aspect is the joy of those who unite with Elohim. And for each of these two aspects, we have three. It's triply said. In Hebrew, that means it's a superlative. So his enemies are super destroyed, right? But his friends are super joyous. But let's go to what the text says itself. So the text says, let his enemies be scattered. So there's going to be three rhymes. So his enemies, oivav, yafutsu, be scattered. And his haters flee, yanusu, before his face. And it's commented, driven away as smoke, driven away as wax melts in the face of fire. So the lawless will perish. And here we get yovedu. So we have yafutsu, yanusu, yovedu. And the lawless will perish before Elohim. And so this is a total defeat of the enemy. And this arising of God is the sign of his total defeat of the enemy. But that's only one aspect of his arising. The second is a total gift of joy, and here I read in verse 4, while for just carers of others, those who join Elohim in just care for others, they're going to have a triple joy. And let me read what we have. joy will unfold, joy of inner liberation before the face of Elohim, blossoming, jubilant joy. So here we repeat in English joy, joy, joy with different attributes, because in Hebrew we have three different verbs to have joy. So we have ishmehu, yatsu, and yasisu. So it's the vocabulary of Hebrew for joy is much richer than English. And so there's this superlative joy for God to arise. And so this psalm is going to be a development upon this opening line, right? That we could say the victory of resurrection is already prefigured in this psalm. Now, as I just told you, in this psalm, we have three parts, three big parts. The first big part, I put it in blue with the middle yellow. The second big part in red with middle yellow. And the third big part, again, a form of blue, another blue, and yellow in the middle. And so it's three different developments which are in this form of chiasm, where it's around the center, around the heart. And so to get, where does the resurrection go? Where is the gift that God, Elohim arising, where does it bring us? So here I want us to read together verse 7 and 8. And we have this following, and I will go line by line. O Elohim, sheltering in a home his solitary beloved ones. I read it in Hebrew. Elohim Moshiv, right? Sheltering in a home. Yehidim is sheltering, Moshiv. Yehidim, his solitary beloved ones, and Baita, Beit, Bethlehem, the house of God's house, right? But so sheltering in the house, in a home, his solitary beloved ones. So this word in Hebrew, Yehidim, it's Yahad means one. So it's also the one, unique one, and it's not a word which is very common in the Bible. We only have it 12 times in the Bible, but its reference point is in the book of Genesis, chapter 22. Genesis 22, it's the sacrifice of Abraham. And 3 times in this sacrifice of Abraham, God or the angel addresses Abraham and said, because you offered your son, it's usually translated by your beloved ones. So it's this Yehid, Yehidim is a plural. It's so we could say, for someone who reads this psalm in Hebrew, we can say, this first line is Elohim sheltering a home, his Isaac, his unique Isaac, and who is offered in sacrifice. And so it's God shelters the other Isaacs. And of course, Isaac, especially in sacrifice, is the image of Christ. And we're all called to this identity. And so God arises and he shelters, right, the unique, beloved one whom I am in a home. What a beautiful reality. But it's in all its contextual reality of being among sons of Adam after the fall. Just let me read the next sentence, which is one which is different from what I wrote earlier, but I think is more corresponding to the original text. So I read it, the second line of verse 7. Into prosperity he leads forth prisoners, and so too obstinate ones from rocky, barren hill country. So he gives a shelter to his unique Isaac, his unique beloved, right? But Elohim acts likewise, bringing into prosperity, we could say, sheltering in a home also, right? Prisoners. And that's us after the fall, prisoners of sin, right? Prisoners in our vices. And so obstinate ones, I hesitated. I think the best, the closest meaning in English would be the proud one. It's the sin of pride. And even, we could say, the pride ones from the rocky, barren hill country in which they are, right? Which has no shelter, no home. And so Elohim does this extraordinary gift in arising. He completely destroys the enemy. He brings the supreme joy to his faithful. And that is giving them a home and protecting them and bringing them out of prison, bringing them out of their pride. And so this is God's designs. And the last word of our, the last line of this central psalm is, O Elohim, you go out in the face of your people, you march through the desert. You can think of Jesus, follow me. He came out in the face of the people and said, follow me. And follow me because I am bringing to you this design of Elohim to give a shelter, who wants to shelter in a home, his unique one, bring him out of prison, out of his vice of pride. And thanks to the experience of the desert, to march through the desert. And then there's this word Selah. So I could say one of my joys in preparing this psalm is that I tried to find an appropriate division for this psalm, and I wasn't taking account of the Selah. But the Selah which indicates take a time of silence to receive what you've just read. We find it as the end word of each of the three central sayings of the Psalter, which confirms the structure which I give you tonight. And so right now, we're not going to go any further into studying this first group from verse 5 to verse 11. We have the heart and everything before and after surround this heart message. So if we have time, we'll be able to come back. But let's go now to the second group in this Psalter and look again at the words that are at the heart of the second group. So the second group goes from verse 12 to verse 24. And again, in red, I put, there's this central part. And let's read it and enter. You see, we're entering into the heart of the message, which is prophetic of the resurrection. What we just saw was a wonderful expression of what the resurrection is all about. But this second part is again a wonderful one. So I read verse by verse now, and here, the chariot riders of Elohim are twice 10,000 of thousands. So the chariot riders, we find them repeatedly in the Psalms or in different passages of the Bible, and so sometimes they are used, for example, the chariot riders of Pharaoh pursuing the Israelites. But here it's the chariot riders of Elohim. And so it has two possible interpretations, and which are a multitude, right? Which is very insisted on. Twice 10,000s of thousands. It can be the great army of heaven. The chariot riders of Elohim are they are there. They are present witnesses of Elohim arising and bringing about this wonderful gift which we Christians see in the resurrection. But it can also be the chariot riders of Elohim, all those who now belong to Elohim. There's now multitudes have gathered behind Christ. Multitudes are now wanting to enter into the mystery of God arising. And they are the premises for all humanity. So chariot riders of Elohim are twice 10,000s of thousands. And in Hebrew, it's not exclusive. In other words, I would say it's the saints of heaven and earth, right, that are here in their multitude present. And then we have the second line. My Adonai is among those of Sinai in the abode of holiness. My Adonai, this is Adonai in Hebrew means my master. So that's why I put my. And that means the one whom I serve, whom I recognize as my leader, right, is among those of Sinai, those who have been gathered by God by the first theophany of revelation, the appearance to Moses of God, the revelation of his name, and he's among those of Sinai in the abode of holiness, and he already in Sinai we have the manifestation of God's abode of holiness, the model of the tent of the covenant is shown to Moses, and this abode of holiness finds its fulfillment in the temple of Jerusalem as far as the Old Testament prefigurations are. And of course, then there's the New Jerusalem, which is in the New Testament, which is the full accomplishment of the abode of holiness. But my Adonai, my master, right, is among those who receive God's trumpet call at Sinai to take on the path that leads us to the abode of holiness, to the tent of the covenant, to the temple, to heaven and the Jerusalem of heaven. So, God arising, this is what happens, right? And my Adonai is that I identify myself as at the service of Elohim in this development of the theophany, which goes from Sinai to the resurrection and up to the heavenly Jerusalem. And what happens there? So here, verse 19, you ascend to the lofty heights. The fathers of the church see that this God arising, the resurrection, finds its fulfillment in the ascension of Christ into the heavens. And here we have in the central verse that the God arising is really taking all the way to the heavens. And who is he taking? So after the heart of the first group, which was also in red, we're not surprised to what follows. You lead captives captive. You leave prisoners, right? And captive. And this whole thought is taken up powerfully by St. Paul in the letter to the Ephesians, where he says, he ascended, what does it mean? But that he had also descended into the lower parts of the earth to come to our encounter, right? And he who descended is the same who ascended far above the heavens to fill all things. And so he is taking us from our lowliness into the lofty heights of heavens. But with our free cooperation, where we freely choose to be the servant of Adonai, of Elohim as my master, and where God can say at the end of this first line of verse 19, you receive gifts of consecration from Adam. In other words, Adam formed in the image and likeness of God. Through this whole development of the theophany of God is freely cooperating and associating himself by gifts of consecration. In Hebrew, we have, so he ascended, Alita Lamaron, and then he led captives captive. It's Shavita Shevi, which is an expression which you find repeated a number of times in the Bible. This double, you took captives, but here it's the only place where it's God who takes captives. Otherwise, it's the oppressor, it's Pharaoh, it's the Babylonians who take captives. But we have a new reality with Elohim arising, that he leads captives to the lofty heights. And this is what our psalm is about. Such a wonderful prefiguration of the newness of life which is brought about by the resurrection, and where our full free cooperation is solicited. You receive gifts, O God, O Elohim, of consecration from Adam. And now even the obstinate are to abide there. So they're re-insisting on what we had in the preceding central verse. The proud are going to be abiding in these lofty heights. And so after calling our Elohim Adonai, here we call him O Yah. So Yah is a cry which is an exclamation, a shout of joy that refers to, the whole word would be Yahweh, but that's never pronounced in Hebrew. And Yah is my exultant Hashem, who was revealed to Moses at the burning bush. And O Elohim. So this is the work. So it's both in Hebrew. I'm meeting the identity in Elohim arising. I'm meeting the identity both of God revealed at the burning bush and the God of creation, Elohim, recognized in all he has created. And then it finishes, verse 20, blessed be my Adonai. So blessing, we saw it last week. It's blessed be my Adonai is may the manifestations of Elohim in his rising up, right, be fully enlightening those to whom it is destined. Day by day, El of our salvation helps us to bear our burdens. So isn't it this beautiful? A God who ascends into the heights, who brings with him those who are imprisoned by the fall of Adam, but freely engage in being servants of God. But a God of salvation who helps us to bear our burdens. And so he is, come to me, you are heavy laden, right? And I will give you rest. So all this, we can see how intensely we are in a prophecy of the New Testament. In these two first central verses. Let's go. Let's go now to the third group, which also has in its center, in red, the message at the heart, which is from verse 30 to 33. So let me read line by line. Kings bring tribute to you to your Haikal in Jerusalem from afar. What is Haikal? Haikal is the main sanctuary in the Temple of Jerusalem. And so this is the prophecy which we have in some other psalms in Psalter, that those who are from foreign lands will come and bring their tribute. They will recognize in the Temple of Jerusalem the habitat of the true God. So they will come from afar and they will bring tribute. They will join in this free gift of consecration to God. So this is often also attributed to, in the history of the church, to the coming of the Gentiles into the church. So, but anyway, those who are far away are coming and to what is the central worship temple that the Jews have been preparing for centuries. Now it's the kings of the earth who are joining fully in the worship of the holy people. So there's this wonderful openness, which is announces the universality of the church. And this is because God has corrected also the pagans, those foreign. And that's what we have in verse 31. You had rebuked the wild beasts of the reeds. So the wild beasts of the reeds in the Bible is an allusion to the reeds of the Red Sea, the reeds of Pharaoh, of where God, where the Egyptians represent those who imprisoned and oppressed the chosen people of God. So, and they were wild beasts in the reeds of the Nile, right? And they are rebuked by God. And you rebuke the wild beasts and reed, alliances of leading nations amidst calf-like vassal nations. So you have also rebuked these alliances in between nations. What this association of nations and where one is vassal of the other and trying to take dominion over this world and not allowing God's dominion to shine forth. And then more precise about what is these these pagan obstacles to accompanying God's theophany. It is such the marvelous reality, which is the thread of the whole Bible. So the second line of verse 31, for lust of silver, there's for lust of money, they were disintegrated into sludge. It's lust of the worldly power is brings out disintegration of peoples, right, who are seeking worldly power. Nations pleased to battle were scattered, and this seeking out a war is vanquished by the rising up of Elohim. All these are great affirmations which the New Testament brings about the resurrection of Christ. In the resurrection of Christ, peace will be established universally. War will be destroyed. And lust for human power, right, will disintegrate. But as we saw in verse 30, in verse 32, magnates, in other words, the great ones, the kings, you could say that the great kings will not come from Egypt, and Cush, which is usually associated with Ethiopia, shall hasten to extend its hands to Elohim. And so we have we're going to have the leaders from far off become those who become to lead even the people of God. And you could say, especially with Ethiopia, we could say today, Ethiopian church is leading the world in extending its hands to Elohim. And Egypt also, we could think of our Coptic brothers, right? They now come and they are really a model for the universal church. And so it finishes with verse 33, O kingdoms of the earth, sing to Elohim, sing praises to my Adonai. In other words, we, chosen people, we call on the kingdom of the earth, join the heart of our worship of God. So we be one body of worship of God. So this is the heart of this whole Psalm 68. And it's these three great messages which we have, which are all followed by a sila. In other words, each of these messages requires that we stop, meditate, and become familiar and welcoming, basically, of the characteristics of the gift of resurrection, of Elohim arising, is the heart of this psalm. But this psalm, as you see, each part is surrounded by, you could say, a crown that that highlights, that brings into even greater focus the beauty of these three central messages in the Psalm. And so it's a wonderful gift we have with this division of the Psalm, where we can approach it, though we have, especially in these surrounding parts, very skilled poetry. Right? They're around a very clear main message. So I think tonight we have the time to look more at the first of these three parts, verse 5 to verse 11. And and to see what the whole context in which you have this central message of the first part, where Elohim sheltering in a home his solitary beloved ones. Into prosperity he leads forth prisoners, and so too obstinate ones from rocky, barren hill country. O Elohim, you go out in the face of your people, march through the desert. It's giving a home, giving your home, Lord. And we saw in the next parts that your home, it's your abode of holiness. Right? And even to those who are imprisoned, to those who are also completely taken by pride and don't know how to get out of it. So God is arising to give a home to everyone, including the great sinners. So how does it start with verse 5? Right? Sing to Elohim, praise his name with a song. Remember what the last words of the psalm were, right? It's called, it was a call to the, O kingdoms of the earth, sing to Elohim, sing praises to my Adonai. But here, it's us, people of God, sing to Elohim, praise his name with a song. And what is this song? Pave the highway through the barren plains for the chariot rider. So prepare this way for the saints of earth and of heaven. Pave the way for this way. Enya is his name, and in this exultant call to the Lord who revealed himself to Moses, and who gave his name, Shem in Hebrew, right? Hashem, right? So in the Hebrew, we have here Beya Shemu. In Yah is his name, and we exult in the name revealed to Moses at the burning bush. And then what follows? And thus greatly exult before his face. We are meeting. Remember this great thirst of the Psalms. Show me your face. But we are receiving with this rising, arise Elohim. We are ready to greatly exalt before the face of Elohim. And who is this Elohim? And here we have this beautiful verse 6. Father of orphans and defender of widows. So is Elohim in the abode of his holiness. Again, a wonderful introduction into what is the heart of this, the heart of this psalm, heart theme. Is that it's the little ones. It's those who are weak, whom God chooses, and to to be brought to his abode. It's by the cross, which is a scandal to the powerful ones, but to the weak and those who are nothing, right? It's the power of God. And here we have Father of orphans, a God who's Father of orphans and defender of widows, whose power for those who are weak. And so is Elohim in the abode of his holiness, and giving us immediately this partaking of his holy abode. And I put here, the abode of his holiness is the first mention of the temple of God, which will be mentioned in this psalm a number of times, each time a little bit with a different name. It's part of the poetry of this psalm. But as we have in this verse 7, O Elohim sheltering in a home, his beloved one, his solitary one. And the temple, or heaven, or is what God prepares for the weak ones, which he has come in his through the incarnation of his son, to deliver and to come to participate in this glorious parade. And so we have the central verse, which we saw, verse 7 and 8. But on the other side of this verse, we have this little group, verse 9 to 11. And so in front of this extraordinary design of God to bring about the fullness of his gift of taking us into the new life of the resurrection. The earth rocks. That's what happens the day of the resurrection of Christ. Even the heavens drip before the face of Elohim. Such is Mount Sinai. So that's a wonderful little poetic sentence saying that what happens in the theophany of Mount Sinai and all the subsequent theophanies in the Bible of the Old Testament and New Testament, it's the heavens are dripping. It's the gifts of heaven, right, are coming and moistening the earth and giving it the taste of heaven. So God really came on earth so as to manifest to us the gifts of heaven. And then, so, such is Mount Sinai before the face of Elohim. O Elohim of Israel, what a gift to the chosen people of God. That we are the ones who receive in first place these theophanies of God, which are celebrated in this psalm. And what is the meaning of these theophanies? Verse 10, a torrent of generosity you lavish back and forth to perpetuate, O Elohim, your heritage, weary of its faith. A torrent of generosity on the part of God to the weary ones which we are, and which daily we can say, in our seeking to be true servants of God, we found ourselves so often in this weariness of not being really able to profit from the heritage which is given to us through baptism. These are such beautiful sentences. And then in verse 11, those fully living for you, the fully living ones, it is in Hebrew. You settle in a place that you prepared for the poor in your goodness, O Elohim. So, fully living in the Psalter, in the Bible, it's fully engaged in your freedom to respond to God's gifts. So, to those fully engaged in their freedom to respond to God's gift, you, Elohim, settle in a place. So, we're going to the abode, right? We're already, verse 7, Elohim shelters in a home, his beloved, right? So you settle in a place that you prepared for the poor in your goodness. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Theirs is the goodness of heaven, O Elohim. So we're going to continue next week this psalm, but I hope that this is a first taste which really brings you great love for this psalm and the desire to let it shine as the church in the Byzantine tradition gives this psalm to be what makes the resurrection of Christ shine on Easter week. Okay, so I stop here, and I don't know if you have any comments or any questions. There are quite a few difficult verses, but what I've shared to you is the result of a lot of study and work, and I'm confident that this is also one of the main understandings of these verses, which the fathers of the church had. But we will go into more detail next week. So do not be afraid of a long psalm like this. It's if you so the church, the Byzantine church for Easter, only keeps the very first two verses, and that's already enough. Or these central verses which are in red, they are also in themselves. They contain such a wonderful message, each time with a selah, in other words, requiring for us to take time to meditate them. Okay, so we are now, if there's no comment, I will just give you the blessing and look forward to the continuation next week of visiting the psalm, which has such treasures to give to us. So I will. The kings bring tribute to you, to your Hekal in Jerusalem from afar. Magnets will come from Egypt. Cush shall hasten to extend its hands to Elohim. So sing to Elohim, sing praises to my Adonai. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.